have tracked us down. They're going to destroy our cash. You will join. We shall go on playing our fight, a new town. Strange eyes fill strange room. Voices will sing up their tired end. The hostess is grinning. Her guests from sinning. Hear me talk of sin, and you know this is it. Strange days have found us, and through their strange hours we linger alone. Bodies confused. As we ran from the day to a strange night of stone.
Oh, yes. And that's a great opening act. Of course, The Doors and Strange Days. The producer of the Myth of the Zodiac documentary, Andrew Knock, put together a playlist. It's not part of the documentary. It's just something he did on his own that I saw, and that song was included in it, as and a lot of other good songs. I'll have to find it. I'll put it in the notes if I can find it again. But it was a really good music selections that kind of were of that time of the Zodiac reign, a reign of terror over the Bay Area. So, yeah, you're getting kicked out. You're gone. You're blocked. Jim was awesome. Pretty smart guy, too. Troubled, but smart. And a talent. And they definitely sold a few records. Good seeing everybody. Thanks for showing up tonight. Darnell, you haven't made it yet? Oh, I forgot to. Yesterday was my buddy Keith Sharp's birthday, so happy birthday, Keith! If you managed to jump on tonight, it was yesterday. Sorry, I missed it. I think I emailed with you, and I didn't know it was your birthday till today. But happy belated, Keith! Hope you had a good day yesterday and today. So happy birthday! So anyway, I don't know how many people have seen the documentary yet, Myth of the Zodiac. I was pretty happy with it overall. Wasn't exactly what I was expecting, but the more I saw it, the more I was kind of happy with the way it turned out. And, of course, this is mainly, it was focused on Professor Horn's myth of the Zodiac theory. So no surprise there. I don't know why people are surprised by that. I guess they missed the title of it. It's Myth of the Zodiac. What did you think it was going to be about? And I know some people don't like the theory or there's some critics of it, and he's used to that. It comes with the territory, but some of these past documentaries, I mean, give me a break about, Ross Sullivan and Larry Kane. and that's supposed to be taken seriously, but you want to take some shots at this, go ahead. Really. I mean, if I got to sit through a documentary that's trying to tell me that Larry Kane or Ross Sullivan or the Zodiac, that's an absolute joke. And I mean, so I already think it's heads and shoulders above stuff like that, which is just total crap. Or I won't get into the Monster of Florence stuff, but it turned out pretty well. And the way that happened was Professor Horan got me involved, and I met with the producers over Skype, and I, got involved, and they, asked me what my theory was, and I said it's, Don Cheney, the guy that brought forward Arthur Lee Allen, is actually the creator of the Zodiac persona, and Allen had a cursory role, but I think Don Cheney's the mastermind behind all this, and they liked it, and all that, but they had already decided this is going to be about Tom's book, and I knew that, so that's fine, no problem with that at all, and I thought if I could get a little Cheney Allen in there, that'd be great. But we'll just see how it goes. So they flew me out to California, and they put me up at a hotel, and it wasn't in Vallejo. It was another little town in between San Francisco and that whole area. I can't remember what it was. It was kind of like a newer, kind of pretty wealthy type little small town. I cannot remember the name of it, but that's true. Professor's white New Balances cracked you up, right, Nathan? Yeah, that's pretty funny. So anyway, they put me up at this hotel, and then I get an email from Andrew, the producer, the day before I'm supposed to do the bulk of my filming that wound up happening at this house they rented in Benicia. And he sends me all these different questions and stuff, nothing to do with Allen and Cheney, which I could just freelance all day long on, and that's my wheelhouse, right? But it was a lot of case background and stuff, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta learn all this at like 10 p.m. when I'm supposed to get up early to go out there to start filming. And I was like, oh man. And I just, I knew as much as I could. I kind of looked over it all for like maybe an hour. Then I tried to get some sleep. And there were some kids or something in the room above me. And they were literally jumping off the bed all freaking night. I mean, just you think that would get old after a while. They were literally boom, boom. And then you hear them laughing, get up on the bed again, boom, boom. I mean, I think Tom Voight sent some people out or something to stay in the room above me. It was insane. I went downstairs to complain, and I mean, these two dudes that were working at the front desk looked like deers in the headlights, and they, of course, they weren't going to do anything about it. Oh, we'll offer you some earplugs, and I was like, just give me another room. I got to film this TV show in the morning, and we don't have another room, sir. Blah blah blah. I mean, I might have got 2 hours of sleep. Who knows what? Get up there to the house, and they hooked me up and everything. Everybody's super cool, and I got to start rolling through all the detailed case background. And I'm like, I thought I was just going to be able to, Cheney Allen it for a couple hours and roll. But I'm going through Lake Herman Road, walking through how, what happened, how the killer came up. He's on David Faraday's side of the car. And then we think he forced him out of the car. And then he shoots Betty Lou in the back. Every detail I could think of. And I keep thinking to myself, did I get it right? Because I'm just like, I wasn't expecting it. So then roll into Blue Rock Springs and go through every little detail. Mike gets out. I mean, the Zodiac gets out. He goes over to Mike's side of the car. He starts shooting through. He shoots, one goes through Mike, John, into Darlene, this whole thing. And I'm like, hey, Keith, happy birthday, man. You're not sure your chats are showing up? I don't know. Hopefully we can fix it. But anyway, rolling through all this heavy case background. And I mean, it's like, I'd slow down. I'm in it a lot, Sean. I'm in quite a bit. I didn't get to do much Cheney, or really, I didn't get to do any Cheney and Allen, but as far as being in it, I'm in it a lot. So I'm happy for that, because you never know. They could have cut me out entirely. I knew my voice was in it because of the trailer. So I knew I had at least one line from the trailer, but no, I'm in it quite a bit. I think I'm in it the most, just below Horn. No, I'm not bragging, but I'm in it quite a bit. They gave me a lot of scenes, so I'm really grateful that they gave me so much of that. No, but I'll get to that later, Dennis. That's a good question, though. So anyway, I'm rolling through, and it's like just straight through, just straight through Lake Herman Road, everything that happened, straight through Blue Rock Springs, everything that happened, straight through Lake Berryessa, everything that happened, and then it was on a pretty busy street in Benicia, and they actually show the house that we filmed in the documentary. It doesn't say it, but it'll show the house, really cute little cottage, that they rented. and I'm sure it's in California. Who knows? It probably goes for like 6,000 a month or something. But there wasn't much furniture in it. But it would pick all the microphones are really sensitive, so they'd pick up cars going by, and I'd be on a roll. Like I couldn't even believe I'm remembering as much detail as I am. I got to remember that Brian, that Cecilia tightens up Brian, and then Zodiac tightens them both up, and then he just and Brian says, "Hey, stab me first because I can't stand to, I don't want to hear Cecilia, crying out in pain when she's being stabbed." Just remembering all the little nuances that, and a lot of that didn't get in. There's just not enough time to do every little detail. But keep thinking, did I leave something out that was important? Like he had a knife and a gun. You're just sweating it out. But a car would go by, and the microphones would pick up the car and they'd say, "Stop." He put his hand up, "Stop." We have to start all over because the microphones picked up the sound of a car driving in front of the house that was too loud. And I'm like, oh my God, what, like it was stressful. And so rolled through the case background. And then he says, well, tell me about, your theory, whatever. And I'm like, well, I think it's this guy, Don Cheney, brings forward the prime suspect, Arthur Lee Allen, 1971, blah, 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 blah. And, get through all that. And I don't know if any of that's going to get in. It didn't, but oh, well, it is what it is. It's about Tom's theory. So I was really happy to be along for the ride. But I hope so, Jeff. I mean, I think I came off pretty well, especially I did not expect to be the case background guy. I mean, I think they asked me when we first talked, when I first started the producer, it's like, well, who do you think's that, like one of the better case background guys or whatever? And of course I said Richard Grinnell. I said Richard's like encyclopedia. And I also said Michael Butterfield. And I didn't know Michael was even in it till I saw it. I was like, oh, Butterfield's in it. Of course, he's the nemesis to Professor Horan, which always kind of has been. And so that was kind of a good choice. And I like Michael Butterfield. We've always got along. He interviewed me twice. I think I kind of moved him a little bit on the second interview I did with him because I went in pretty hard. But Michael had read my book, and I didn't even know he knew about my book. And he told me that offline before he interviewed me with Al Warren on NBC Radio that he was a part of. And he said, man, I read your book, and unlike a lot of Zodiac books, I found it to be very factual and well written. But no, that was a big compliment coming from Michael Butterfield because he's been around a long time. So it's a good guy. I have a lot of respect for Michael Butterfield. I mean, they could have used him as a case background guy, but they mainly used me. So that's cool. They asked me a lot of stuff. They asked me about Chester Clark Klingel out of nowhere. So that I haven't even watched it all front to back, but I don't think the Klingel part made it in. So I'm like rolling on Klingel, I'm like remembering all these useless details about, Chester Jr. got killed. I think he was a Marine, but he got killed when he was 21 in a car accident. And then his, I think it was their wife, Belanda, got, the horse ran into their car and killed her. All these bizarre things that happened around him. And I'm nailing all that, but that didn't make it in. But, I hoped it did. But the main thing was, did all that stuff in California, came back, didn't hear anything at all for a couple months. I'm not really talking to Professor Horland at all about it. Just thanked him for, suggesting me to him, and everything was cool. And then I get a phone call from one of the crew guys from Texas, guy named Ben. And he said, hey man, our research guys found out this new information about, Zodiac and all that. And I'm like, cool, and he goes, we want to get your reaction to what we found on film. So can you fly out again? And I'm like, like in the next month or so. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Cause I want to know what they found. And I didn't know where it was going to be, if it was back in California or maybe in Texas, because the whole crew's based out of Austin. So I thought, man, if I could just drive up from Houston to Austin, that'd be really nice, because I don't like traveling too much. And it wound up being in St. Louis and filming in this warehouse. Of course, Professor Horn lives in St. Louis, so I think they had to film him a lot. So they came to him, which is super cool. And get up there to St. Louis. I'd never been there, so I wanted to check it out. Checked out the arch, and the baseball stadium, and everything. And time kept going by and by. I was supposed to start at 7 p.m. and I got there, and they were like, "No, man, it's still too early. We got to take you back to the hotel and come back." And I was getting a little agitated. Finally, I get in there, and they start filming me, and they're going to tell me what they found out. And of course, it was this stuff about the letters, that they had the letters analyzed. And this is the way I remember it, though, is with. Sorry, I think it jumped off for a second. Are you a Klingel guy, Nikki? Yeah, Klingel's interesting, but you got to know the background on him. If the background on Klingel is not really what they claim it is when he moved up to Eureka, whatever it is. So he's not as good as you think he is when you understand the timeline of Klingel, but it's a great story. But anyway, I get up there and he's telling me about the letters. Like this is this big reveal, and he says, "Well," and this is the way I remembered it, but it's not the way it comes out in the documentary. And maybe I just heard it wrong, because I was all amped up about what it was going to be. But the way he made it sound to me was they thought they found two letter writers up until Stein, and then it goes to one letter writer. Like two people contributing to the letters, and then it turns into one. That's how I remembered it. And maybe I heard it wrong or whatever, because I think that's not really what they found. If you've seen the documentary, it's more like one writer, and then some weird things start changing in word choices and stuff like that after the Stein murder. But I thought it was two guys. So, they're telling me this information as they're filming me. And I'm, what I said? I said, that's Cheney and Allen all day long. It's like, this is Cheney and Allen. I've been trying to tell you. And so I was hoping that would get in, and it didn't. But maybe just something had changed or whatever. And they, it's not 100% as when you watch the documentary. So I was hoping that piece would get in, because I was on for that. And not much of what I did in St. Louis even made it in at all. It was mostly the stuff I did out in California. But it was definitely cool though. It was fun doing it. But like I said, I think it's one of the better ones, not just because I'm in it, but Larry Kane or Ross Sullivan. But you have to understand, Andrew Knock, the producer of this, he's gonna like something like a hoax theory more than just these two guys or this one guy, or it's just his thing. He likes conspiracy type stuff, aliens. He did the one with Unidentified with Demi Lovato, or she's singing to the alien and stuff. So he likes stuff that's a little different and far out. So that's probably what attracted him to Professor Horn's theory in the first place. So that's what, it's different. It's outside the box. So that's what they're looking for, So I know Zodiac people get it up, well, you got to forward it, and, this is what we believe, and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. I mean, if a producer likes it, there's something that they like about it, and they're going to do what they want to do. I mean, that's just the way it is. They have the creative control, and and it wasn't just Andrew. There was other people that are making these decisions with them, and then you got to edit all this stuff together. So you just don't know, what's going to make it in. I watched it again, and I had no idea that they got Crabtree. I had no idea, and whether or not you believe James Phillips Douglas Crabtree, the second, the third, Phillips Crabtree, his name changes 150 times and they make fun of it. But whether or not you think he actually killed his ex-wife or not, it doesn't matter, because the dude is part of the Zodiac lore. And if people like the hoax theory or not, it doesn't matter, because people have speculated about Crabtree on message boards, and if he killed Darlene, for years. I mean, ever since there's been Zodiac forums, people have speculated. I wonder if Crabtree's involved, or if Crabtree not only killed Darlene, or maybe Crabtree's the Zodiac. Maybe Crabtree did Lake Herman Road and Berryessa and everything. So it's super cool that they found the guy. And I didn't know that I was going to be like the lead up to it, because I didn't know Crabtree was going to be in the documentary until I saw the trailer. I had no idea. I knew who he was when I first saw the trailer, but they don't tell us any of that. Maybe Horan knew, but I didn't. So I was like, that's cool as hell. So they asked me, they were asking me about Crabtree, but I didn't know he was going to be in the documentary. It was just in general asking me about him. And I knew, because Crabtree plays into the hoax theory about, maybe he committed Blue Rock Springs to kill his ex-wife, and then it's, Dennis Land at Berryessa, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, they asked me, do I know if he's still alive? And I said, I think he is. Yeah, I think he's alive. They played that. So unfortunately I got it right. Maybe a lucky guess. I just figured I didn't hear he wasn't still alive, but who knows? I mean, no one could probably say 100% that Mike Migeot is still alive. Of course, Mike was not in the documentary, but it was super cool that Crabtree was, and then I guessed right, but it was cool that they played that piece, because I didn't even know the dude was in it. And it was cool that they talked about that famous picture that man is, I'd put it up if I could find it, but he's, standing next to Darlene, and he's got his arm around her, because people had said for years that that's Crabtree. And I always knew that it wasn't, but no one really knew. We still really don't know who it is. But Crabtree said, that's not me. That guy's a total dork, blah, blah, blah. If you watch it, I don't want to give anything away, but Crabtree's saying he's not the guy in the photograph. And they show a picture of Crabtree in high school, and he looks kind of similar to the dude in the photograph. And I think he claims the guy in the photograph was a doctor that had done some medical procedure on Darlene or something, if I'm remembering right. And I know some of you guys have seen it, but um, it was interesting to get the guy out there. And I know people were saying, "Oh, you could tell he's lying," blah blah blah. And I think he probably does embellish a lot. He seems to enjoy some level of attention, even though he hasn't talked to anybody other than one other Zodiac researcher maybe 15 years ago, where apparently he said a lot of bad stuff about Darlene. But to find Crabtree and get him to agree to go on camera was badass in my opinion, because he's been speculated on forever, just to see what he looks like, what his story was about, being looked at, because the police at the time knew to look at Crabtree. It was one of the murder victims' ex-husbands. Of course they're going to look at him, but they had been divorced for 2 years. Crabtree was remarried. He said he was doing acid somewhere that night, so maybe he's embellishing that or lying or whatever. And he probably does. He said he was into cryptography or all this stuff, but he can't prove it. I think he's just kind of having fun with it all. Not that Zodiac wouldn't do that, but I don't know. But he's interesting either way you look at it. I love the Crabtree part, and I love the part of the video where they asked me if the dude is still alive. That was just cool. I didn't even know that was in there. I didn't even remember being asked about Crabtree, but apparently I did, because it was a long time ago. Cool, Keith. I'm glad you're feeling better. Yeah, chiropractors are the way to go, man. They really are. Um, yeah, doctor who worked on her knee. Thanks, Tyler. Strange thing for a doctor to do, take a picture with her. Yeah, that is kind of weird. And he's kind of a weird looking guy, whoever it was. Someone else said that it was a friend of Crabtree named Frank. No one knows. I mean, I bet Crabtree can't even remember. He's just trying to fill it in. It's definitely not Crabtree though. I don't. That guy, he looks just a little too clean cut to be. He looks like he could be a doctor, the guy in the photo, but definitely don't think it is Crabtree in the photograph. And he, of course, denied it in this film. But it's cool that they got him on there. I mean, that's big, because that he's been talked about for so many years. So at least his story is on record, and he just denies that he killed his wife. And it'd been 2 years, but I know he's just kind of a weird guy. There's a weird likability about Crabtree though when you watch it. There's like, and as a friend of mine pointed out, it was kind of cool how he cusses a lot. They bleep that out. I mean, it's a documentary on Peacock. They could let any word go that they want, but they bleeped it out, which I think is good, because it allows maybe some younger viewers see it, even though there's some crime scene photos and stuff you might not want the young kids to look at. But I thought it was cool how they bleeped that out, because it still comes across how the guy speaks. He's pretty rough around the edges, but he has this weird likability about him. I don't know how to put my finger on it. The guy is weird, but it was cool how we led into that, and I'm glad that they got him. And then they had two of Betty Lou's friends were in it, and there was another lady that was one of the sunbathers at Lake Berryessa is in it, and her last name is Jensen, no relation to Betty Lou, and she remembers everything that happened that day. So it was kind of neat to find her. I wish they could have gotten Betty Lou's sister in it, Melanie Long. That would have been great if they gotten her, or maybe Darlene Ferrin's daughter that survived, that was a baby at the time she was murdered, because she's still alive. I think she's a dental hygienist in the city of San Francisco. She's still around, married, beautiful family. I've seen pictures of her. I guess she's never just, doesn't want to talk about it. And she was probably too young to remember much. Dean Ferrin is in it too. They even found Dean. Dean had a scene, which is cool. It would have, I would have liked to have questioned Dean myself a little further about what he remembers. I mean, he worked at the IHOP as a cook back then. Of course, Starlene was already over working at Terry's at the time, but I would have loved to talk to Dean more. But, I would have loved to got some Cheney and Allen in. Don't get me wrong. I was a little disappointed that it didn't, but I think it sets me up well. If I could ever do it and anyone's watching, I'd love to do a Cheney Allen documentary. And if they had, any powers that be, or if you have TV behind you, maybe you get someone to participate, kind of like they got Brian Hartnell to participate in the Zodiac film. Okay, there it is again. I don't know. I think I knocked it off, but if I did an Alan Cheney thing, who I want to get while they're still around and able to do it. Well, particularly one person. that I would like to interview myself. I don't want to leave it to the producer. I'm going to take that role and interview this person that I've tried to get a hold of, but probably won't be talking about it. And that's Karen Allen. All day long, I want to talk to Karen Allen. I think she would know the most and remember the most about what was going on back then. With Cheney, how they all met at Cal Poly. That I want to talk to Karen Allen big time. That would make a darn good show. You let me interview Karen Allen for 15 minutes and we're going to make some headway. Big time. That's my promise. If any producer out there, call me. We'll, if you can get Karen Allen on board, we're going to move the needle big time. And she's still alive, that's for sure. Ron is still alive. Ron's a little older. Ron and his brother really didn't get along much. I mean, he'd be all right, but I think Karen would just be a little more fluid and probably remember more, but she probably just doesn't want to talk about it, which would be yeah, somebody definitely I appreciate that. Uh Make the Cheney Allen thing happen. There's some other people that I would bring in. Cheney's brother-in-law didn't live too far from me here in Texas for a long time, and I tried to get a hold of him, and and the guy passed away maybe 3 years ago, and I'm like, dang, dude, what a missed opportunity. Um, he was the one that worked with Cheney at Fleur that he's talking about when they're in the cafeteria at Fleur and the newspaper comes out about Zodiac or whatever, and the guy says, "Hey, doesn't that look like your friend Lee or whatever?" Remember that whole story? Um, he probably lived 20 minutes from me from where I am right now. And I would have loved to talk to that guy. It would have been great. That's a good point. That's a good point. That's a really good point. It just sounds like something that would make sense. That if Ron died, because yeah, she probably feels bad because that was his brother. I mean, if they didn't really get along too well, that's his brother. That's a good point. I bet you she would. Or if somebody, they have a, I know they have at least, I know they have a daughter. I think that's their only child. I think they have one daughter who's grown and has a family of her own. And I bet she would. If you're right, if Ron passed, I bet Karen would speak. I would love to talk to Karen Allen all day just to see how Dawn acted, what she thought about it at the time. That'd be great. I mean, and I'd also like to talk to Sandy Panzarella's youngest son, who's obviously still around, and his name is Santo. I'd love to, he'd be on my list. So, I mean, there's people out there while they're still around to talk to. I mean, of course, the younger people like he would be, but Karen, is getting up there. It's not, she's not, might not be around forever. I hope she is, but I would definitely love to do it. Yeah, Keith. He looked like a deer in the headlights when he was asking if he killed Darlene. Some people probably might believe he did, but let's think about it. Um, he's was remarried, been divorced from Darlene for 2 years. When the Zodiac got out of the car, he goes over to Mike Majot's side of the car. I mean, usually a guy would be driving, but he should have known that was Darlene's car. It was her Corvair, and Zodiac gets out of his driver's side door and walks over to Mike's side and starts shooting. I mean, maybe he thought the sound would be less or whatever from Mike's side, but it's a little odd. Like if his anger was at his ex-wife, why does he go over to Mike's side? And if he's like jealous that she's with another guy, come on. I mean, she'd been with a lot of other guys, unfortunately. And they do a good job in the documentary and not exploiting that or making her look bad or anything like that. They talked to one of her sisters. It's not Pam or Linda. It's I don't know. Somebody help me if they remember the name. It's one that doesn't speak much, but they did not talk to Pam Huckabee, who's usually the most vocal of Darlene's sisters. And then I think Linda is probably the second, and then this one. And then of course she has a brother Leo, who's not in it. But they talked to one of Darlene's sisters who doesn't get interviewed much. But yeah, he definitely looked like a deer in the headlights. But 2 years, he's separated from, divorced 2 years, remarried. It's just, he's kind of believable that he didn't do it. But yeah, I don't know if I believe everything he says. But why does he care about Mike? Why didn't he go after Dean? She's married to another man now. Well, wouldn't it, if he's jealous of the men, why wouldn't he go after her current husband? Who cares about Mike? I mean, Mike just, hadn't wasn't even really dating her, other than maybe that night. And of course, Mike's brother Steven was also interested in Darlene, and they were identical twins. You couldn't even barely tell them apart. You could see pictures of Mike and his brother from high school. You can't tell them apart. They are identical. The myth whole thing is, like I've always said, and I say this in the documentary, I said that I always felt that that type of theory has some merit. I do, and I stick by that. I've always said that. That's what, and the professor said good things about my theory. He told me, he's like, man, when you found out that Don Cheney and Paul Avery were going to the same little junior college in 1952, I was blown away. And he told me that. So he's said a lot of good things about my theory. And there's some interesting things about a hoax theory when you look at all the discrepancies between the four crimes. You've got Lake Berryessa, where he writes on the car door, but he never claims Berryessa in a letter. There's not one Zodiac letter that says anything about Lake Berryessa. I killed that couple on the lake shore that day, or I stabbed them and the man lived, or nothing. He never mentions it whatsoever. It's the only way Berryessa exists in Zodiac world is the car door and the phone call. That's it. Doesn't show up in any letter. None of the Stein letters. I don't know why. I think it was maybe he didn't feel like he needed to. And where is Paul Stein? He wanted to prove it was him. And that's one of the harder things about trying to put details to a hoax theory. Like, if it was Hal Snook writing all the letters, you have to have him getting access to the shirt. And I think the bigger problem there is he would have had to have taken enough pieces of shirt to match what was already gone. I mean, it's difficult, And they talked to a guy in it that says, no way the guy, anyone's getting in here that didn't have access, that could have gotten a hold of Stein's shirt or whatever. But there's some attributes of it that are interesting. Lake Herman Road, who knows exactly what happened? There's that one bullet casing from Lake Herman Road. Was there more than one person there? But the police at the time were pretty comfortable that it was the same person. It was the same guy writing the letters is committing the crimes. They probably would have been 100% sure that it's more than one guy, but they were comfortable that it was, for not just because of the phone calls, but everything as a whole. I think these other guys were pretty sure about it. And think about it. If I was doing some Cheney Allen stuff in this documentary, then they have to counterbalance that too. And it takes so much time. And then you get people that think they know it, but they don't really know it. Well, Arthur Allen was ruled out numerous times on DNA and handwriting and blah, blah, blah. Well, then why is he still the prime suspect? Look, they don't understand the absolute state of the physical evidence, because it's crap. They don't have Zodiac DNA. They don't. They got some weak sample from the 1978 letter that's not even confirmed Zodiac. It's weak. The fingerprints don't match. The fingerprints from the Napa phone booth do not match anything taken off of Paul Stein's cab. So just things like that leave the ground ripe for a hoax theory. They just do. And like I said, people can like it or not, but if I got to sit through anything about Ross Sullivan or Larry Kane, who's got a thick Brooklyn accent about being the Zodiac for 2 hours, I think people can calm down over the hoax theory. I mean, it's just the way it goes. No, that's a good comment right there. I do too. I think it was too. Yeah, and the handwriting's not going to look the same if you're down, and I didn't see the part someone told me about where he says that the color of the marker on the Carmen Gale was black and the Zodiac used blue or whatever. I can only think 2 or 3 letters that were in blue, but I don't know. Ooh, who has the watch? I don't know what happened. That's a good question. I was assuming you're talking about Lee Allen's watch. I wonder what became of it. I don't know. I think he was cremated. I'm not 100%, but I think he was. I'm pretty sure Arthur Lee Allen was cremated. But who knows what happened to the watch? It's a good question. Man, who would know? I mean, that thing would probably go for a lot of money on the. It'd be creepy to have it though. He should have been expecting that question though. I think he should have been expecting it, but maybe not. Andrew's pretty intense, so maybe he sprung it up on him. That's true, Darnell. That's why I thought I was going to hit the home run when they flew me to another city to tell me what they found. I mean, yeah, those guys that analyzed the letter say there's a definite change in style after Stein. There's a definite change in what they call small words. Um, it explains it all. There's a lot of articles out there that explain it. There's let me read one of them. There's one that just came out because all of them are a little different when they're talking about the analysis that they found. It says the experts said that their analysis showed that there are visible shift in style throughout the letters, particularly before and after the murder of San Francisco cab driver Paul Stein, who was the last confirmed Zodiac victim. What is striking is that what's changing is not the vocabulary, it's the complexity and so on and so forth, and the content words. Calfario explained. It's the complexity of the use of smaller words. So for the letters before the Stein murder, the use of the word "the" differs from that of the letters sent after his death, in which words like her, them, like, you, and rather are more commonly used. Calfario explained. There are so many words that are being used after the Stein murder that indicates a change in style. I think that's kind of the nutshell of what they found are these smaller words that I was just talking about, is what the AI guys found after running it through their analysis of the AI. To them, it looks like somebody different is now writing it. Now they did film Michael Butterfield talking about it, and Michael Butterfield suggested, well, maybe uh, the killer changed in mindset, because I know Butterfield thinks this is one letter writer, one killer, and he's never been a suspect guy. He's not real high on Allen. Um, he suggests maybe psychologically they change somehow psychologically, or maybe split personality or stuff like that. But maybe, but who knows? But it's more likely that it's somebody else now writing the letters after Stein. So, I told them, this was Phil, but they didn't put it in there. I said, I think that Cheney and Allen had a falling out. It could have happened when the Pleasanton letter was mailed because Allen got the speeding ticket and then Cheney got mad, or the Stein killing was a warning to Cheney. I mean, like, hey, get out of line. You're going to wind up like the cab driver who had the same birthday as Arthur Leon, of course, December 20th. I don't know. I threw that out there. That was, of course, Tony Danelli's fine, but I was hoping that would get in there. I know it's a little wild, but I was hoping it would. But that's the genesis of the letters. But yeah, Darnell, I think that did support me. So it's kind of a bummer I didn't get it in, but nonetheless, I'm happy with the way the show came out. It's a consistency of the written stuff, including the car at Berryessa, that makes me think it's one guy. You mean one guy for all the writing, or one guy for all of it? I have some people tell me, oh, I think this is all Cheney, and I don't think Allen knew anything. Allen had to know something, because Allen was questioned just after Lake Berryessa um, by Detective John Lynch, and by all accounts, he was cool as a cucumber, and that's not Arthur Lee Allen. He would have had to know, and he had some protection going, far as getting in trouble, or they couldn't pin it on him, or something like that. Maybe Allen's in the dark about the murders, or Cheney had something on him, but Allen was questioned just days after Lake Berryessa. Out of all the weirdos in Vallejo in 1969, why did they talk to Allen? Allen had never killed anybody. He didn't have, he had gotten fired from Valley Springs for inappropriately touching children, but he had not been arrested for child molestation yet. That didn't happen until 1971. Why did Allen get questioned in the Zodiac crimes just days after the third canonical crime? That is what you have to go back to with Allen. That's just cannot you cannot erase the fact that he's questioned in one of the murders, and said he had planned to be at Lake Berryessa that day. He told them that. Well, I was going to be there the day that couple was murdered, but I changed my mind at the last minute. Really? He was expecting to be questioned by Lynch. There's no doubt about it. He was expecting it. That leads me to believe it was pre-planned. What are you talking? Oh, wait. Okay. The 3-button hamburger. That's a good way to say it. It is a 3-button hamburger. DC and all day long. Yes, unfortunately, behavioral analysis, studying and creating personality prints didn't really come to the forefront until 1978. That's true with FBI Special Agent John Douglas. Good point. I really wish if anybody can help me, those four dudes that do um the body language guys. Is that what they're called? Did they have a YouTube channel? I tried contacting one of those guys with all the Cheney stuff and a link to his name was Arthur Lee Allen and the background and all that. Never heard back from them. I'm sure they get this stuff all the time, or show suggestions. But the YouTube guys, Keith, I know you know who I'm talking about. Those four dudes. But if anybody out there tonight that's listening, if you could help me lobby those dudes to do a show where they're watching John Cheney's body language and his name was Arthur Lee Allen would be great to get it on that show with those four dudes and analyze, is he being truthful when he says this about Arthur Lee Allen? I think that would, not definitive, of course, like any of this stuff, but I think it would be an interesting step in the right direction because I think there's a lot to the body language. That's true. It would be impossible for Arthur Lee Allen not to have some level of involvement because he has to know something's going on. Whether it's done saying, "Hey, let's just jerk around the cops and we'll take credit for this stuff." We heard about these people being murdered and we don't know who did it, but let's just take credit for it. And you got to remember, Cheney's taking a big risk here because what if they find the real killer? And he's already come forward and said it's Allen after 1971. He's going to look really, really bad. Like, wait a minute, we know you're lying now. Because if what you told us, about Arthur Lee Allen couldn't have been true, because now we know the killer, and there's no way he even knew you were Arthur Lee Allen. There's no way Arthur Lee Allen has no connection to this stuff. It's just impossible. It's there's crazy circumstantial things that happen here and there, but there's just an avalanche of stuff for Allen. Mainly not just the watch or that he misspelled words for comedic effect, which we now know Zodiac could spell. He did it for comedic effect like Arthur Lee Allen. But Phil Tucker seeing the ciphers, his wife seeing the ciphers in the gray metal box in Allen's room, way too much going on. It's just there's too much going on. Somebody said the other day, I don't know if the person's listening, I can't remember your name, but he said that he thought it was Cheney doing all the letters and the ciphers and just trying to frame Allen, but didn't do any of the murders. Well, the problem with that is the Stein shirt piece, because the letters that were mailed with it, there were two of the Stein letters, and the Melvin Belli letter had a piece of the bloody cloth in it too. That led the writing of that is dead on to all the other letters, and it's just Zodiac all day long, with the letters that had the bloody shirt pieces. So you would have had to have known them. So, like I told this guy, Cheney is just too good of a fit for Lake Berryessa in so many ways. He was known to grow his hair out in the middle because Brian Cecilia could see it coming through the eyelets of the mask. That's not Allen wearing a wig. That's ridiculous to wear a wig under a hood that could shift. That's Cheney. Cecilia said 6 feet tall, 2 inches taller than Dave Collins. Cheney was 6 feet tall. So was Allen. But Cheney had a little weight on him. Cheney with that long knife with the sheath, because he was known to make his own custom sheaths for knives. He preferred carbon steel blades. He was an avid big game hunter. Cheney would go into the woods for 2 weeks and survive off the land, killing things, eating the food that he killed, roughing it. I mean, he's a mountain man. So stabbing people wouldn't have felt too weird to him because he was so adept at hunting and using knives. Would have been nothing for him. He's just such a good fit. Thank you, Jennifer. It's always good to hear my sister like something I did. Thank you. That means a lot. So it's what my family thinks is the most important to me. Yeah, I was in it a lot. I was surprised about how much I was in it. So I'm happy for that. I'm really happy. I would like to have got some Cheney Allen, but I was in it a lot. Especially, I was kind of the case expert guy, which I did not expect. If I knew I was going to do that, I would have been boning it up like crazy before. And I just started, just spewing it all out, and it worked out. So I even got to do the Crabtree introduction. We saw that, and then they asked me if I thought I love that part where they asked me I think he's still alive, and I was like, Yeah, I think he's still alive. And they're like, obviously he's still alive. We got him. I don't know why they asked me if I thought Crabtree was still alive because I knew no one had talked to him in years and years. I never went looking for the guy. You know, he doesn't really play into what I do or my theory. But it's funny that they asked me if I knew if he was still alive because they knew he was. I'm sure they knew it when they asked me if he was. That they knew, but I didn't. So I was just maybe I just got a lucky guess. I was like, yeah, I think he's still alive. I was just lucky, but yeah, I got that's good. I'm glad you liked it, Jen. Yeah, the Red Phantom's a lot different. Their handwriting style's a lot different. The Badlands letters a lot different. I think there's more, there's more to do that. I think there's more to study with the letters. If unfortunately all the physical evidence left over has been handled so many times, particularly the San Francisco letters. The police took them home to their families to touch, and the one they claimed they got the best DNA sample from was found at the last minute when they were doing the primetime live show because they couldn't get a good DNA sample off the ones that were still stored at the SFPD crime lab. But all of a sudden, they came up with three more. Well, where did they come from? They were at one of the detectives, SFPD detectives' homes. They just kept the Zodiac letters at his house, and then they found out who had them, and they got three more letters to test. And I think one was a 78 letter that they apparently got a decent DNA sample off of. Problem is the 70, the testing they did on that was bad. And then 78 letters, not even considered Zodiac. I think Richard thinks it's authentic though. So I wouldn't rule it out because Richard knows the letters. Thank you. I appreciate it. DNA doesn't crack it. Is there any chance? Is there any chance we can? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe somebody knows something, on their deathbed. I don't think we're ever going to find the hood or ever going to find any of the weapons. Unless the Gary Post the case breakers can make that climb up the mountain where they say all the Gary Post gave all the weapons away, but they're too far up the mountain for a bunch of 50-year-olds to get up there and find them. I love that. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, any documentary about Gary Post as a Zodiac, then I would have to just do something crazy. Yeah, I think handwriting can change a lot. I don't put a whole lot into the handwriting, but this analysis, they weren't looking at handwriting at all. They're just looking at the word choices and stuff like that. But they didn't look at it. They did not study the handwriting. I think Andrew makes a comment that anybody can pretty much change their handwriting, or it does change as you age. Like if you look at Don Cheney's handwriting, I put up the other day from when he was 17 versus the Voight letter. It's some of it's similar, but a lot of it's changed a lot. Yeah, I bring on Ned. I definitely, if I get something, I'm definitely bringing Ned along. No doubt about it. Behavioral panel, yeah. If you can reach out to those guys, will be awesome. I tried. I'm going to try again, but that'd be really cool. See, I'll tell you, I'm an artist and a pretty good one, but there's no way I could copy that extreme laid down writing style with the letters almost laying on their sides. Yeah, particularly that hard slanted D, which that would be the holy grail to find if you've had a suspect and you found some old writing samples and you'd see that D. Uh, I've seen some handwriting experts say there was one that was part of the Monster podcast, and it was a lady. I don't recall her name, but she's talking about the Zodiac letters and the writing style, and she thinks that it was flying finish and stuff that believes it's mostly like probably his natural writing, other than that hard slanted D, because it's like almost like you said, it's like laying down. It's so slanted, it's like it's laying down, and there's no way that's natural for anyone to have a D that's that. Maybe he tilted the paper or something like that. And I think Andrew says it in the documentary, something like, definitely, or the two guys that did the analysis, like they could tell that they were, trying to disguise their handwriting, which Cheney could have done all day long. He was a draftsman. He knew how to use weighted pens and nibs. He could have easily altered his handwriting, being a good draftsman, by hand. Yeah, Allen had foot problems. He had gout in his foot. He cannot. No way Allen makes that height. And when you see the Sea Waters film of Allen from '62, I that filmed at the Sea Waters, they took their channel down, which is bizarre, isn't it? But the film of Allen they had getting into his Austin Healey that he owned at the time. That was his favorite car. He had a Carmen Ghia too, which is interesting. I think he might have had two Carmen Ghias. I can't remember, but he definitely had one that he when he died in his will, it went to his best friend Glenn Reinhardt. But at the time, he had that Austin Healey, and you could see that video film of Allen in '62 that I guess um, Seawater's mother took or whatever, but had one of those old cameras. My dad used to have one. It's cute. My sister will remember that camera my dad had with this light on it that was so bright it would blind you. That old school film camera. It was one of those. But you can see Allen like around his waist. He's huge. I mean, probably not Ross Sullivan big, but big. I mean, he was around his waist was just looked massive there. And I don't think he lost any weight between 62 and 69. I mean, before he died, he lost a lot of weight because he was sick. His kidneys were failing. He was on dialysis. So he definitely lost weight by then, but he looks huge in that 62 thing. He is not walking briskly towards Brian Hart. Now, Lake Berryessa, no way, because Brian describes that, and this is the Zodiac speaking, when they first, he knows he's coming down here, and now he's got the hood on, and he says briskly walking towards them. That ain't Allen. No way. But it is somebody that's stocky and has a little weight on him. Yes, Cheney killed at Berryessa, but never before and never after. Otherwise, no, you know what? No. He was a job hopper big time. Cheney was a job hopper, very intelligent, not lazy at all. I think it's Cheney at the Presidio too, for a lot of reasons. Falk saw engineering boots. Cheney was a mechanical engineer. Falk said barrel chested. Cheney's barrel chested all day long, and he was barrel chested in 1965 because I could prove it. Got the photos. I mean, like Popeye, like Alex Jones, the talk show host. That's barrel chested to me. Cheney was barrel chested, wore glasses at the time. After the Stein murder, he stops wearing glasses. He wore glasses from not in college in '63, but from like '65 up to '69, he wore eyeglasses. But engineering shoes, barrel chested, the hair matches, the widow's peak. He had that all day long. He's got a lot in common with the Falk description and somewhat of the Robbins kids at the Stein murder. But the best fit for him, yes, is Berryessa. But he was a job hopper all day long, even when he had the job with Sandy Panzarella at Science Dynamics, which was a cush job. I mean, he's working for his friend who's making millions. I mean, his brilliant friend who is doing computerized medical billing in the early 1960s. I mean, no future in computerized medical billing at all. I mean, it took off like a rocket, and they were the leaders doing it. And he eventually got bought out by General Dynamics. Panzarella was a multi-millionaire over and over. And Cheney's working for him, his friend, for a while. I mean, hiring, firing, stuff like that. No heavy stress. I mean, Cheney's a trained mechanical engineer, but he's working for his best friend, Sandy Panzarella, and probably making good money because the company's making money hand over fist. And why would you leave a gig like that? Unless he just was jealous of Panzarella or what. But he only does, I think, works for Panzarella for maybe a year or so, not that long. And then he's always job hopping at some power plant or another. He never holds a job. When he first moves to San Francisco and he's living on Day Street in '65, he's working for, I think it's YG Yamas, which is a mechanical engineering company. I think air conditioning for commercial buildings type stuff. Really good company. I talked to the owner of that, the guy that actually started it. He didn't remember Cheney because it was already getting to be a pretty big company. But man, that would have been a company that you just would try to stay with and retire from with a ton of money. Back then, you would have had a pension or who knows what. It would have just been a really good, solid employment. But no, he could not hold it. He never held a job for whatever reason, and highly intelligent. But I think it was because he had a problem with authority personally. That's the only way you can explain it. Um, that's a good question because when his name documentary came out and Pedro Bosox first put it on YouTube, of course, I was never the first person suspicious of the guy. I just wanted to take it to another level because you read the comments under his name is Arthur Lee Allen. I mean, 80% of them are like, man, well, Don is like acting pretty guilty. But before that, really, no. I think that's really what got him on the radar. It really was. I mean, of course, Voight interviewed him in 2001, and that was a pretty interesting thing because Don had already changed his timeline, and that was, of course, before his name was Arthur Lee Allen, which is 2000 came out in 2007. So there was some suspicion of Don, yes, before the documentary. There was because he had changed his timeline. And I think some people had picked up on the fact that he had changed his timeline. Bauer was suspicious of him. If you read the Bauer report, and that happened, when Arthur Lee Allen was still alive. Of course, Bauer was working the case when Arthur Lee Allen died in '92, and of course, he was dead on the floor or whatever. But no, there was suspicion of Cheney probably starting in 1990s around when Allen died, because that's when they knew they were gonna, after Allen died, and they were going to test Allen's brain for some reason, the DNA from Allen's brain against one of the DNA samples from the letters, which it was the 78 letter, not the 74, whatever. It was from the 78 letter that they tested Allen against, and he was negative for his DNA, but they took a sample from Allen's brain for some reason. But when Cheney came out and said about the stamp licking deal, that's kind of what started putting him on the radar. And even made Ballard suspicious. That's when they gave Cheney, they set up the lie detector. Of course, he got drunk and where he couldn't take it that day. And then when he retook it, it was inconclusive. Cheney must have been laughing inside himself when they filmed his part. And this is, it was his name is Arthur Lee Allen, which was made with the Zodiac speaking. But yeah. Oh, yeah. He's laughing inside. And then he tells you what the basis of the crimes were. He tells you it's all the modus operandi is in that little book, The ABC Murders by Agatha Christie. And then he goes, Arthur Lee Allen never told me what it was, but I knew what it was. It was the ABC Murders by Agatha Christie. Read that book and then think about the Zodiac case, and you'll know what the basis of the Zodiac was, what it was based around. It was based around Agatha Christie's ABC Murders. That's the template for the Zodiac Killer. ABC Murders by Agatha Christie. If I do get a documentary, it's going to start with like a picture of that book from Agatha Christie. You want to know what the template, what these crimes were? Read that book. That book is fiction, but it's what somebody put into action. You got one targeted crime. You got a lady working at a breakfast restaurant. It's got so many parallels to the Zodiac. And then the only reason we know about it is because Don says it all through the guise of Arthur. Appreciate it, Steve. Yeah, I didn't expect to like be the case expert guy. That was not my plan. My plan was to come in and get a little bit of just a contrasting theory, and that was my whole goal. But it came out well. I mean, I don't know the case as well as Butterfield, but I guess they made me look good. So I appreciate them doing that. It came out really nice. That's true. Sullivan died in 78. So I mean, yes, he died in 77 of Pickwickian syndrome. Yeah, and I know Richard thinks the 78 letter is authentic. So yeah, that would rule Sullivan out right there. But Sullivan should have been ruled out anyway. Sullivan is too dang big. The dude was every bit of 300 pounds in February of 68. I mean, you don't lose weight when you're suffering with Pickwickian syndrome. You're only getting bigger. That dude was probably every bit of 340 in 1969. Sullivan was mentally ill. He couldn't barely hold a job as a dishwasher, but yet he's able to construct the 340. Big old Ross is able to construct the 340 that took over 50 years to break. Big old Ross couldn't hold it, it's a dishwashing job, but he's able to do the 340. Right. How did he get to Lake Berryessa? Because Ross Sullivan wasn't even known to own a car. But how did he get to Berryessa? Did he borrow somebody's car to drive up behind Mike and Darlene at Blue Rock Springs Park? Did he borrow the car? Who did he borrow the car from? Somebody he knew in Santa Cruz. Ross Sullivan is just, in some ways, he's worse than Gary Post, because at least Gary Post probably had a vehicle back then. I think Ross Sullivan is even worse than Gary Post. He's terrible, and anyone that ever plugged him as a suspect is a joke. He's awful. He's even worse than Hawaii Larry Kane from Brooklyn, New York. Yo, I'm just here to steal your money and your car keys. Okay, Brian? Don't be a wise guy. I mean, it's just terrible. When did Cheney first come up being involved with the case? Cheney first came up with being involved in the case in July of 1971. He's got a long record being involved in this case. And when he came forward in 1971, with a little help from his friend Santo Panzarella, he forever changed his case. Without Cheney, you don't have Allen, you don't have Graysmith, you don't have Fincher. Without Don Cheney, no Graysmith, no Allen, no Fincher. He gave you all that. That's what we know of this case. Graysmith's book, who took a lot of liberties. You got the Fincher film made from the Graysmith book, and you got the still prime suspect Arthur Lee Allen. We only have that because of Don Cheney's decision to come forward in 1971. So he's been involved in this case since 1971. That's a long, long time. He inserted himself into this case. He wanted to be part of this case. He wants to know what the police know. That was his goal. It was not to see Arthur Lee Allen go to jail. That's fact. Look at the Voight interview. Like I said the other day, why wouldn't he just go all in on, he liked cryptograms? But no, Don doesn't take the bait on that. He wants to keep that for himself. He wants to keep the Mikado to himself. He wants to keep the ABC murders to himself, but he wants to tell you about it. And if he tells you about it, he has to assign it to Arthur Lee Allen. So, answer is 1971, long, long time. It's the only person that truly inserted himself into this case, like BTK did, got caught doing it. But that was what BTK did. He wanted to take a victory lap, and it was his undoing in the case of BTK. Is the ALA documentary jumping off point? No. Or is that when it became? Yeah, it became more apparent in that because people watched that over and over, and they were like, "What is this guy talking about?" I mean, of course, it's a cast of characters as it is. But I think the smartest. Well, Panzarella is really smart because he was so successful, and he seems weird in that documentary because he's got early onset Parkinson's that affected his speech. But Panzarella is highly intelligent. But Norm Boudreau is just a really smart guy. You could just tell the way he was just real matter of fact, down to earth, intelligent. And you could tell with Norm that, he says when he first met Don Cheney back in the day that he just got a bad feeling around him. He said he couldn't put his finger on it and he couldn't tell you why, but he just got a bad feeling when he was around Cheney. He just had sixth sense that Norm Boudreau had about Cheney that he couldn't put his finger on. He knew something was off with him. And that's probably, like, to me, one of the most critical things in that whole documentary is when Norm Boudreau says that, because he doesn't have a dog in the fight. He has nothing personally against Don Cheney, but he's just said, when I met this guy back in the day, there's something about him that was off that I didn't like. Yeah, it's good. It's really good. And one thing they do is, and I give Andrew a lot of credit for this and the other people that were involved in making it. And man, and they give a lot of attention to the victims. They really do. And talking about the victims and talking to two of Betty Lou's friends and one of Darlene's sisters. And they're really try to put a lot of emphasis, on and remembering the victims of the Zodiac. And that was big. And they put that part in there about me talking about Paul Stein, about Cliff Groff that I knew. And I met Cliff because I found him because I knew he was good friends with Paul Avery at Bakersfield Junior High. And I hope Cliff is still alive. I talked to him maybe 2 years ago, and he was up there. I think Cliff was already in his early 90s, I believe, but very, very spry and could remember everything perfectly from back in the day. And when I'm talking to Cliff about Paul Avery and their friendship from Bakersfield, he says, did I I also should tell you that I knew Paul Stein. I was like, you did? He's like, yeah, I knew him well. I was very close to Paul Stein. I taught Paul Stein at Fresno State because Cliff was a journalism teacher, and he was a journalism guy at Bakersfield, and then was in the, I think he was a writer. He was a journalist, and he taught Stein a journalism class, and he knew him from that, and just loved Paul Stein. And they put that scene in there of me talking about Cliff saying that Paul Stein was the sweetest man he ever knew. And I wish I had added the part to where Cliff told me, he said, when I heard that the Zodiac had killed Paul Stein, I wanted to go find the Zodiac and kill him myself because he cared so much about Paul Stein. I wish I had gotten that piece in, but they did put that one in there, me saying that I talked to somebody that knew Paul Stein personally and what they said about him and his character. And man, I was really happy they put that in there. That alone was worth it for me to be able to say that. Yep, Myth of Zodiac Killer on Peacock. Thanks, Patty. Well, the one main drawing is the one, of course, he's wearing the hood. But if you're talking about the guy we call the voyeur, or the one that was looking at the sunbathers, we don't know that that's Zodiac. But you're talking about the guy's got the dark hair that the girls describe as nice looking or whatever. That might have been the Zodiac. We don't know. I love showing that picture of Cheney from the Void interview versus the voyeur picture. Every time I put that up in the community, people go crazy. And it was Professor Stewart's the one that first showed that to me. I hope you're out there. Bible group. I haven't seen you in a while. Do you think there are any successful serial killers today that are able to outsmart all the advanced technology? If so, how do you think they will keep from getting caught? I don't know. It's definitely a lot harder now with all the DNA, and you would just have to make you would have to go to some pretty good links to get around any of that. Of course, if you're just killing them and you're not raping anybody like Golden State, which was his undoing. I mean, look at Golden State. That guy, even for the time he was doing it before the technology, he was an ex-cop. He knew how not to leave fingerprints and did brazen attacks, never got caught until the technology caught up with him with the DNA. And even with the DNA, as many as rapes as he committed, it was only, I can't remember the story, but he almost got away with it, even with all the stuff he left behind. It was that one particular crime that they had done a rape kit or something, and they managed to turn that into something more. So even in that case, he almost got away with it. Even with even with the later technology, it was almost a fluke that they were able to finally take Golden State down. But I think that's why there aren't as many serial killers today. It is kind of hard to outsmart the technology, and there's more cameras now, more camera phones, more surveillance cameras outside of stores and things that could lead to people getting caught. It could be done, but it's definitely a lot harder, fortunately. But the DNA advancements are great, especially a company like Othram, who's able to take the weakest samples and amplify them. And they're solving every Jane Doe case in America right now. They're on fire over there. They're expanding their offices in the Woodlands. They're going crazy. Yes. Answer to that, yes. Don Cheney, he's bragging. Go watch His Name Was Arthur Lee Allen and just think if he is, even if you don't believe it, just suspend belief forever and watch His Name Was Arthur Lee Allen and watch Don's parts and think, okay, if he's a Zodiac, let's see how he's acting. And listen, one of the main things, and I say this all the time about, it's Cheney's word choices and it's his snarkiness. There's no better word to describe Zodiac and Don Cheney. They're snarky. That's that sarcastic it's that taunting, sarcastic, I'm smarter than you, and I'm going to rub it in kind of thing. Like Cheney saying, talking about Arthur Lee Allen, what he told him he was going to do at Lake Herman Road. Lee told me what he wanted to do to some girl there, and it wasn't pretty. He had to add he has to add that little side note, and it wasn't pretty. Well, of course it wasn't pretty, dude. He's going to kill people. You have to add that it wasn't pretty. Uh, there you read the Zodiac letters. You see that same snarkiness come out. Like, just go read them and think about that. Listen when Cheney's talking about the policeman in Pomona. His name was Stone, Granite, Slate, or Bullet, or something on that order. You can tell he's got that disdain for law enforcement right there. He was the ideal cop. He was a handsome cop. Bullet. He was just this strapping young cop, like he wasn't too smart, but he thought he looked great. It's just that condescending snarkiness that he's got. It's that I'm smarter than you and I'm going to flaunt it. So, yes, his behavior absolutely matches it. Zodiac was brazen, got away with a lot, almost got caught at the Paul Stein killing. That's brazen to insert yourself into the case in 1971. Why would he do that? If let's just say he's not the killer and neither is Allen, to do what Cheney did, to insert himself, even if it's just to play with the cops. Let's just say, because that's one thing we know for sure. Cheney came forward in 1971 and accused his friend of being the Zodiac Killer. And many of police went to their grave believing it was the guy he brought forward, Arthur Lee Allen. So let's just say Cheney and Allen had nothing to do with the crimes or the letters. Why did Cheney come forward with Allen? Why? Revenge? That's ridiculous. If it was revenge, why did he wait 2 years after the Stein murder to come forward? Why didn't he call the cops, or if he did anything against him? And if it's revenge, why does he keep the game going so many years after Allen's death in 1992? Makes no sense at all. Cheney's got a lot of behavior in common with the Zodiac all day long. Just look at the snarkiness alone. The Zodiac was snarky. Cheney is snarky. That just that sarcastic. I know better. I'm smarter than you, and the language used. Could have been. I mean, we'll never know. With Blue Rock or Lake Herman Road, it could have been both. Maybe Allen's on a ride along. I don't know. Definitely Cheney for Berryessa for so many reasons. Allen can't even walk down there. Allen's not going to wear a wig. That's ridiculous. There's no way. And then why would Allen use a non-dominant hand? Ambidextrous all day long. Come on. You're going to use, if you're going to plan to kill them both, why would he use a non-dominant hand to do stabbing somebody? You would think you need the most dexterity to do that. A good friend of mine is actually, he told me, he goes, I am like fully ambidextrous. I can use both hands equally. And I said, if I put a knife in front of you, what would you naturally grab? He said, my dominant hand, which is left. But I could use it just as well with my right if I had to. But if I've got time to think about it, I will still use the most dominant left hand. But I'm just as good with my right if I think about it. But if I'm not thinking about it, I'm going to go with the dominant. But I'm going to talk to him more about that because I never knew that about him till a couple months ago. That he was truly ambidextrous. But that'd be, I might do some tests on him. I'm going to dress him up like the Zodiac. Put him out there. That'd be hilarious. I think it happened sometime. Yeah, either before or there. Yeah, if it happened before, it would be, it's a good point from Tony that it could have been a warning to Allen. Maybe I don't know how he would have known, or maybe it's just a coincidence that Stein and Allen have the same birthday. I've got lots of them. My book's a good my book's a good source. The Kindle version of my book has got plenty of good photos. It's got all the photos known, or you could go back through the community section. I'll put some more up in the community section. But the most recent ones were the one from the Cal Poly Pomona yearbook that I got, because those photos were never seen before with Cheney. That's true. He wore the mask to hide his identity. He wore it to transform. Yeah, it's a persona. That's why he had the cross circle on. He was living the character, the comic book character Zodiac. It was a character, probably based, partly on the Lord High Executioner from the Mikado. I think Cheney does. I think he matches Falk's description. Barrel chested, engineer boots, which look a lot like wing walkers, by the way. Wing walker is a anti-slip military shoe. Cheney was in the Air Force. but he's also an engineer. And if you worked in power plants like Cheney did, you wear a shoe like a wing walker or an engineering boot that Falk called it. Barrel chested, widow's peak. He had all that. Glasses. He's a good fit for Falk's description all day long. Automatic writing. This is the meatball speaking. Yeah. A lot of it revolves around ALA. How many people misspell words for comedic effect? The Zodiac did it, and so did Arthur Lee Allen. What a small world. Guy that had a Zodiac wristwatch since 1967. Also misspelled words. It could have. I think it was a team to an extent with Allen. If there's a third person, I doubt. If somebody asked me if I had to say a third person, I don't know. I always go back to Freaky Fred Manali. I mean, thanks, Mike. I'll check it out. Interesting. Paul Avery was a journalist, and that Paul Avery would have known Don Cheney. I can tell you this: Don Cheney, 1,000%. No chance that he did not know who Paul Avery was in 1952. There's no way. It's impossible that Don Cheney would not know who Paul Avery was in 1952. It is virtually impossible. I mean, think of the smallest elementary school you ever went to. That's Bakersfield Junior College. It was so small, it only had a few rooms from Bakersfield High School that they used as their campus before they built a new campus. I think that was after the earthquake. I think it was in 1955 where they finally built a brand new campus in Bakersfield. But before 55 and before the big earthquake, they had a few rooms and shared the same auditorium as Bakersfield High School. That's how small Bakersfield Junior College was. It was about a fifth of the student population of Bakersfield High, which is a decent sized high school. But the college was only 2 grades and about 200 male students in the freshman class, maybe less, in 1952. Ain't no way Cheney didn't know who Paul Avery was, because Avery wrote for the school newspaper. Avery ran for class president in 52 with all the little posters around, the hallways, the very few they had. He's running for class president. He lost. He was a cheerleader. He was in a lot of the plays. All Avery's friends were in the plays. You couldn't miss Paul Avery on campus. I mean, he was everywhere. He was the director of student assemblies. So that every Friday around 10 o'clock or during one period, they would have meet at the auditorium. The students, you didn't have to go, but if you were already there, why wouldn't you go? Because they had these actors come in from Los Angeles, or singers come in from places like LA that were high talented people, and they'd put on this big rock show for free, on a Friday. And Paul Avery was the one that not only put that together, but he'd get up on stage and introduce the act. I'm Paul Avery. Today we have the blah, blah, blah dancers, and they're going to do this stuff for you. And they do a little skit or whatever every Friday. Ain't no way Cheney didn't know who Avery was in 1952. Maybe Avery knew who Cheney was, but Cheney knew who he was because he was all over the place. D'Angelo and Zodiac, another thing in common, they were both stopped by a cop moments and after they both got away. That's true. At the Presidio, and I can't remember that D'Angelo. Yeah, I think D'Angelo came close a couple times. Yes, Jen. Somebody cogitated over that. Stewed about it. Cogitated. Began to cogitate. Cheney did. Cheney killed Paul Stein. No, and she passed away 3 years ago. I think she passed away too. Of course, they were estranged, and then they didn't officially get divorced, I think, until 87. It was it was in the state of Connecticut. Was when they did. No, she never got interviewed. I know quite a bit about her, though. Zodiac fired a perfect pattern to Betty Lou. He did. It was the grouping in her back. Good point, Chris. And there was a missing round warning shot. Yeah, that could have been a warning shot because they speculate that he fired the warning shot at Faraday. Faraday was behind the wheel of his parents' Rambler station wagon, and He was ordered to get out of the car. Of course, no one there, and they both died. They didn't, but this is just speculated heavily that it was a warning shot to get David out of the car. And then he winds up getting shot in the head. And then Betty Lou shot in the back, and that grouping that you're talking about as she's running away in the back. It's a pretty good grouping. But yeah, there's that. There was that extra round that I think Richard Gannell. If you look up Richard Gannell's YouTube channel, he's got a good video on that missing round they found. Yes, cogitate the negative. And cogitate comes up in the story about Gilbert and Sullivan and the inspiration for the Mikado. The samurai sword fell to the ground with a clatter, and he began to cogitate and think about things of the Orient. That was a great. I know, I love that find. I was looking at the online copies of the Bakersfield Junior College newspaper from the early 1950s, and it's called the Renegade Rip. They had the yearbooks was called the Raconteur, but the newspapers were called the Renegade Rip. And I knew that Cheney went to Bakersfield Junior College because his wedding announcement said that he did, and he was in 3 or 4 articles about when he was in one of those classes at Bakersfield Junior College. So I knew that he went to BC, not just because I knew he was from Bakersfield, but it was in his wedding announcement that was in Pomona, and one that ran back home for him in Bakersfield. And I was just looking for stuff about Cheney in the newspaper, and he never shows up. He doesn't even show up in any of the yearbooks, but that's not unusual back then. If you didn't pay the money and you didn't drop your little card in the mail or whatever to be in the yearbook, you just weren't in it, but we know he went there because it's in his wedding announcements, and he's in 2 or 3 articles about one of his classes when they went to the Bakersfield big event there, but he was with the class and he named all the students. He's in there. And when he graduated, that was printed in the Bakersfield, California. When he graduated mid-year 54, it lists, Don Cheney, 1308 M Street. But I was looking for stuff for Cheney in there, and it showed the staff for the Renegade Rip, and it said Paul Avery on it. And I'm like, no way. This can't be the same Paul Avery is the San Francisco Chronicle writer. And it turned out to be the same Paul Avery. I couldn't believe it. I was researching that with a friend that was just blown away. I kept saying, no, this can't be there. No, it's him. And then I later found out that Paul Avery went to Burroughs High School, and which was in Kern County, when he was living with his stepfather, his adopted father. Howard Malcolm Avery was his adopted father, and his mother. And then he would drive into BC. And of course, Cheney went to Bakersfield High School, so he was already right there. He was basically at the same campus he had been to for 4 years. But Avery drove in. But it was the same guy. That's been proven beyond a doubt. That is the same Paul Avery. And his picture, Avery's picture, is in the in one of the yearbooks, and it's the same Paul Avery. His daughter confirmed it. His daughter is a friend of mine. I spent too much time cogitating about those two weirdos. Why were they even hanging out together in the first place? Why are those 2 guys even together? Why are those 2 guys even sitting around contemplating anything? Makes no sense. Cogitate, bouncing, slip of the tongue, concerned citizen. I do not wish to give my name because it might be revealed by the slip of a tongue, or go back and read the concerned citizen card who mailed in the backup key to the 408 cipher, and then go read the Voight talking about Cheney in the Voight interview talking about his lie detector test, and he says that the police were trying to get Cheney to make a slip of the tongue. And then concerned citizen uses it in a weird way. Do not to give my name, for it could be said with the slip of a tongue. So many phrases. Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were both very intelligent. I mean, Cal Poly Pomona's no slouch. Most people going to that school were pretty darn smart. Engineers, electrical engineers. Panzarello was an electrical engineering major. Cheney was a mechanical engineering major. Ron Allen was a landscape architect. But there's some, design involved that. And I can't remember. I have to look it up. That's where, first good picture I ever saw of Ron Allen came from the Cal Poly Pomona yearbook. Hey, Jerome. I know it's late. God, it's probably 5 a.m. in Belgium. Thanks for coming by. Eggs, AIGS, and Big Al, BEEG Al for big. Can't be BEG because that's begging. It's beg. BEEG isn't beg, it's big. Big Al. Signed Big Al, Arthur Lee Allen. Yeah, I'd never heard the word cogitate in my life. I have a bachelor of science in writing. Not science, not art, science. Never heard the word cogitate. Yeah, I do. I do. Yeah, I need to do that. Definitely. To coincide with the movie coming out. Not if you understand. Because I have it on good authority that the principal witness in the DB Cooper case was telling some people about a certain suspect that she heard a podcast about. And who would that would have been? Who was she telling her friends about? Maybe a Green Beret? Green Rec? Him? The prime witness was telling people about that guy? Maybe. I believe she did. So yeah, that'd be a good time. Maybe I'll come out with the movie. You've heard old Southerners say cogitate? That sounds kind of. I've never heard old Southerners say it. I've been around a lot of old Southerners and never heard them say the word cogitate. Never heard them say fiddle or fart either. Apparently, that was really common in Bakersfield. I put that out on a poll for the people that grew up in Bakersfield, and 98% said that they heard that all the time growing up in Bakersfield. Over and over. But yeah, check out the documentary. I think it turned out well. I'm really happy with it. Appreciate the good work they did on it. Appreciate Professor Horan. He did a great job on it. Very, very grateful to him and everybody that was involved in it. Thought it came out well. I think it's something that the more people watch and understand where it's coming from and the emphasis on the victims too, like all of it in a nutshell, the Crabtree part, I think people are going to realize that it's one of the best Zodiac documentaries ever. Yeah, it's true. Paul Avery said that Zodiac was a latent homosexual or whatever, and then that's before he got. I think that was quite a bit of time. I don't remember how long before he got the Halloween card. They had shoot, Duffy Jennings is in the documentary. I used to message back and forth with Duffy Jennings, who, of course, that was like Paul Avery's closest friend at the Chronicle. And Duffy Jennings was with Paul Avery when he opened the Halloween card. Now, when you watch the movie Zodiac, it shows one of the pieces of Paul Stein's shirt coming out of the Halloween card. And that's not one of the correspondences that we know that had one in it. But Richard Grinnell has a good article about that. Like maybe there was this missing piece that was in the Halloween card, kind of speculates. But they do show that in the movie. And I know Paul's daughter had a good copy that because Paul made a bunch of copies of the Halloween card and gave one to his daughter, and they looked at it all. And of course, the police had the original. He was not able to bring the original home, but I might ask her again about it. Yep, I'm not Paul Avery button started to show up. Melvin eats blubber. I don't know. I know people were looking for him if there was an original one. I know there's copies, of course, made now, but I think an original would be a really neat piece. There had to be quite a few back in the day. But yeah, check out the documentary Myth of the Zodiac Killer on Peacock. It is good, good, good. There does need to be more episodes, but I don't think it will. They do. They should put the other stuff I did in it. I'm not complaining. I'm in it a lot. I'm grateful they put me in that much. I don't think they will, unless this just did so well. There was this huge demand for it, but you know, we needed to do Cheney. We need to do Cheney and Allen with Karen Allen. Melvin Eats Buller was an homage of Melvin Belli, the lawyer who was also overweight. Yep, that's exactly what it was. I can tell you, I know of someone that's talked to his daughter. Um, and I also know his daughter has talked to Connie Seawater. That's interesting, isn't it? She's probably not happy with me, and I don't blame her. No offense towards her at all, but I know one guy that was communicating with her and kind of trying to exonerate Don, and they weren't successful. I think she wonders why his timeline changed. I think she wonders why he said what he said. Unfortunately, he did. Unfortunately, he put himself where he did by doing what he did. Changing his timeline was very problematic. Why did he do that? But he did. The only way to really try to exonerate Don would be if it's all Arkley Allen, and it just isn't. There's just too many things against Allen to be the lone killer. And if it was Allen, you got to go back to why would Don wait so long to bring it for? Oh, he told me on New Year's Day '69 he's going to go kill people in cold blood, but I didn't tell his younger brother, who was the best man at my wedding. I just didn't bother to tell him, and it took me hearing something that somebody saw in the newspaper one day in 1971 that I finally said, "Yeah, I better go tell somebody about what he told me that day." So I waited 2.5 years to come forward about the guy that told me he was going to go killing people on New Year's Day '69. I mean, I think she knows there's a lot of she suspects. You know, it's awful. It's tragic. It's awful, but uh, I'm comfortable in saying that she suspects. No, there doesn't. I don't want anybody digging into me. That's funny. Remember, Don Cheney's a nice guy. That's what Alan said when he was told that he was the source of the rumor. Oh, Don, he's a nice guy. But Spinelli, he's a hood. He's a punk. But Don's a nice guy, unlike that dirty old mafia Ralph Spinelli. Yep, that's right. Yeah, that term's been around. Yeah, fiddling farting around Nashville. Yeah, Bakersfield was really common. Of course, they're all Okies from Muskogee and Bakersfield. So it was nothing to them. I'd never heard that term before in Texas. I don't know, but I'd love to. And I could tell you that Don, his family, his parents, including him and his sister, Don had a sister, were good family friends with a family called the Austins. And they had lived in Kern County, Bakersfield area. And then Mr. Austin, the head of the family, moved to Vallejo. Vallejo. That's interesting. And all the Austins were at Don's wedding in Pomona in 1963, two, 1962 in Pomona. And they were the closest family friends to the Cheneys were the Austins, who was a couple that had two sons that were in, I think they were both in, one was Air Force, one might have been Navy, or both Air Force. I can't remember. But they lived, I mean, I don't know, 10-minute walk from Arkley Allen's house in Vallejo at the time of all the murders. So he could have been hanging out at the Austin's house, and even Allen wouldn't have known about it because he was good friends with the Austins. That one of their sons actually lived right across the street from Terry's Waffles house in '69. One of the Allen sons lived literally a rock throw from where Darlene was working back in the day. One of the sons. So that's something you have to consider. Cheney had close friends in Vallejo outside of Allen. That needs to be explored more. You might have asked that before, Robin. I don't know. Um, that's a good question. He did get, he had a good DDR from the Air Force, honorably discharged from the Air Force. So yeah, he would have definitely qualified for the VA. If he had an injury or something, and he's still fairly young at the time. I don't know what he would have been treated for, but it's possible. I mean, he definitely qualified as a veteran. I've heard people ask that. I've seen that come up. People have asked, that's come up before. I don't think so. I really don't have real reason to think so. But when I think about Cheney and Allen, it makes me think of Leopold and Loeb, if you know that story. And they were lovers. I think more so one was driving that Leopold and Loeb, but you remember they were when was that? When was Leopold and Loeb? Was that the 30s, 1930s? And these two guys wanted to commit the perfect crime, and they killed that young boy, and then they found one of their pairs of eyeglasses that were traced to one of the two, and that's how they got caught for the murder. But they were both really smart guys, and their whole goal was just to commit the perfect crime. Like they had no beef against this kid they killed, but they wanted to commit the perfect crime. And I do kind of think of those two guys when I think of Cheney and Allen. I think that was the 40s. I don't know. Somebody correct me, but it's Leopold and Loeb, famous murder case where those two guys killed this kid and got caught. Of course, it wasn't the perfect crime. They got caught. But I do think about them all the time. But I don't know. I don't think they were. I mean, Allen liked kids. Number one, Allen liked kids. He was definitely more attracted to kids. They claimed that he always kind of wanted a girlfriend, but that's probably assumed. I think he was more attracted to 12 and 13-year-old boys was mostly what Allen was into. Hey, Evan. Well, what Horn thinks is it's each crime had a separate assailant, so to speak. Like um, Crabtree for Blue Rock Springs, killing his ex-wife. Of course, Crabtree's in the documentary, and then maybe Dennis Land is the one that stabbed Brian and Cecilia at Lake Berryessa. Of course, Dennis Land was a park ranger at Lake Berryessa, and he kept working at Lake Berryessa for I think another 20 years after the stabbing, which is kind of interesting to note. But he thinks Dennis Land for that. He thinks Hal Snook, who was a Napa police detective, who's the one that found the footprint at Lake Berryessa, and that was Napa jurisdiction for that crime. And he thinks Hal Snook wrote the letters. And Hal Snook does have similar handwriting. Have you seen his police reports? It looks similar to the Zodiac's writing. There's no doubt about it. Somebody told me the other day they thought Cheney's writing and Snook's were two of the best. And I agree with that. Those are two of the best of the people talked about. So Snook writing the letters, Dennis Land doing Berryessa. So it's different people for different crimes. I think Professor Horn thinking that Faraday was killed because of he turned in some drug dealers and maybe they wanted to get revenge, and then he just happened to be with Betty Lou that night, so she just got caught in the crossfire. So it's somebody different for each crime, and then Snook writing the letters to bring attention to the crimes separate from the murderers. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Absolutely. Yes. I used to say that in the early videos. Yeah, Cheney was practicing mechanical engineer in Bakersfield before he actually, he had already had some classes in mechanical engineering at Bakersfield Junior College, and he's actually listed as a mechanical engineer when he's still living at home at 1308 M Street in Bakersfield in 1954 and 1955. Living at home with his parents. He's listed as a Republican. His mother was a Democrat, and she was like a pollster for Bakersfield. But he's already listed as a mechanical engineer. And of course, where would you buy mechanical engineering supplies, drafting supplies when you lived at 1308 M Street? You'd walk down to Earl Price's shop to get all that stuff. The guy that gave away prizes for breaking ciphers, Earl Price. Oh, that's interesting. That's where he would buy all his stuff. I mean, literally, you could throw a rock from Cheney's backyard and hit Price's shop, where you could get 100. Like, God, what was it? It was a big prizes. Like maybe it's $10, but $10 in 1952 was a lot of money. But yeah, he was a pipe stress analyst. Yes, he was already a pipe stress analyst. That was his main specialty in mechanical engineering. But yeah, I think he was working at Fluor as a pipe stress analyst in Gotta go back and look. That was before he worked for Panzarella. So that must have been in 70. So yeah, I think it was in 1970. He's at Fluor, and then at some point in late 70, early 71, he goes to work with Panzarella at Science Dynamics. But yeah, the answer is yes. Thought it was cool. Yeah, that lady was there that day. I don't know how they tracked her down. That's amazing. Yeah, her last name's Jensen, but no relation to Betty Lou. But that's awesome that they tracked her down. And she worried that the Zodiac was going to come back for her, this and that. But yeah, it's a great documentary. It was a lot of fun doing it. I do wish that part was in there about when they told me, because that's the way I understood it. Two riders, and then it goes to one. I'm like, that's Cheney and Allen, man, all day long. But it's cool. I think it turned out great. I'm really happy. I'm really grateful to everybody involved with that. And I think they did a great job. It was a lot of fun doing it. And that's all I got for now. Thanks for everybody showing up. And thanks, Robin. Thanks, Patty, everybody, Evan, Captain J. Always good seeing you. Everybody that showed up in the comments, please hit the like button. That would be huge. I forgot about that. I'll look that up for the next show. I'll look that up. I remember that was something in Vallejo. Yeah, with the baseball tickets. I'd forgotten about that. That's a good I'll look that up, late see. Thanks, Patty. Everybody have a good night. Check out the show, Myth of the Zodiac on Peacock.